Most Amazon used booksellers who lose money on book flips do so because they are using an incomplete sourcing process. Today I'm going to share with you the complete 3-part framework to properly analyze a book before you make a purchase. This is going to give you the full picture so you can make a better buying decision and drastically improve your results. Over the years, when it comes to sourcing, I've seen sellers make the same mistake over and over again. And we'll start off by talking about trends. This is where we look mostly graphically on the historical data having to do with the sales, the pricing, and sales patterns of books. And we're going to do this with Keepa. And Keepa is great for showing you the historical trends, and it's a much needed tool. If you're going to do this business, you absolutely need Keepa, as probably you already know that if you're watching this video. So Keepa is going to show you the sales pattern. It's going to show you what the used lowest price was, what's the new price has been, how many sellers are selling, all kinds of good information. That being said, there's an awful lot the Keepa charts don't tell you. It doesn't tell you how many copies sellers have in stock. That has a huge impact on the overall supply that you need to know. It doesn't tell you the potential profit or ROI that you can make. It doesn't tell you the seller's condition of the book. It doesn't tell you the condition notes of the book. And it certainly doesn't show you if there's a price war going on. Now, because the Keepa chart doesn't provide us with all the information we need to make a buying decision, you need to get out of your mind the thought that a used book has intrinsic value, if you've ever heard that term. Intrinsic value of anything implies that it maintains a value outside of market conditions. So do some books have intrinsic value? Yes. Okay? If your mom gave you a book and she signed it over to you, that should have intrinsic value to you. Not to anybody else, but probably just to you. And that's certainly not something you're going to be flipping on Amazon. I hear that term, and I have people telling me that, and I have to point them to this video in the future so I don't hear that any longer. That's a ridiculous concept. Okay? Used books do not have intrinsic value. When looking at the Keepa chart, you always have to remember you're not going to be selling that book today. You're going to be selling it at a minimum a month, 2 months down the road. And what you want to say to yourself is determine a forecasted value when looking at the Keepa charts. And that forecasted value is going to be adjusted, as I'm going to talk about shortly. All right, let's jump to the next part of the framework, F for financials. So this is important, obviously, right? Has to do with the profit, the ROI, and the velocity in which the book might sell. Really important. Those 3 things all fall under financials. Let's jump in a little bit deeper. Now, there's a couple of things I've heard over the years regarding buying books and what profit should I make, what ROI I should make. And I think they fall into 2 camps. The first one is a dollar amount, okay? I'm only going to buy the book if it has this much profit, okay? That's one thing we've heard. One of the ones I've recently coached someone, and I've heard the $10 rule. I'm only going to buy a book if it has a $10 profit. And the other thing we've heard forever is some people just get it stuck in their mind that they need to buy with a certain return on their investment, okay? If you buy a book for $10 and you get a profit of $10, okay, that is a 100% ROI, return on your investment, okay? So both of those things, by the way, are completely misguided. What you need to understand about profit and ROI and sales velocity is the 3 of them work together. So let me give you this scenario. Let's say we've got 2 different sellers. They're purchasing 2 different books. Seller A buys a book, spends $55, but they got that $10 profit. They're worried about their $10 profit. That's what they think they're going to get anyway at the time in which they make the purchase. So they spend $55. They're making $10 profit, supposedly. At least on paper, they did their due diligence. Let's just assume they believe and everything looks good. That's what they should make. Seller B, on the other hand, they're not making as much, at least not dollar amount. They're making $8 profit, but they only paid $6 for the book. Additionally, on seller A, looking at the Keepa chart and other things, they can see that the book just doesn't sell that quickly, right? It might take a while to sell. Seller B, however, this book sells pretty quick, as you can see. So what are we better off with, the $8 profit or the $10 profit? Clearly, I hope you will understand that we are far better off in a scenario like this to take the $8 profit. Now, you might say, well, Victor, I don't understand because $10 is better than $8. That's true. However, you want to understand a couple of things. First of all, your cash flow, right? If you're tying up $55 worth of your money to get a $10 profit, that's going to take months for you to see. That is a terrible use of your capital, okay? Really important to understand. And where person B, they're only getting the $8 profit, they're not getting 10 perhaps, but they're making a much better use of their capital. And using that $55 that they spent to get the $10, they've only used 6 of those dollars to make an $8 profit. So I talked about 3 different things here: the profit dollars, the return on the investment, and the sales velocity. Okay, so you need to consider all 3 of those things within this financial piece of the framework to make a better buying decision. Do not get stuck on any one of these. Don't get stuck on, I need a book that's going to sell immediately. Don't get stuck on, I need to make a $10 or $15 profit. And don't get stuck on, I need a particular return on the investment. And of course, when you're evaluating a book, you should have the tool in front of you and know exactly what your profit and ROI is going to be, and you should adjust it because remember, I said about a forecasted value in step 1. The forecasted value is your selling price. You're going to plug that in, and then you're going to know the profit and ROI. And when you start seeing those 2 numbers in different books, you're going to get a much better sense of which books are really good and which ones aren't as good. All right, so we've seen the trends, we've got our financials, and lastly, insights. Really important, and this is looking at what is the real market doing right now, meaning whenever you're sourcing, you want to look at the Amazon listing. And the Amazon listing is going to give you some intelligence that you're not going to get from the Keepa chart, and it's going to help influence you to perhaps raise your forecasted price, your selling price, or lower your forecasted selling price. So what are we looking for when we look at the Amazon listing? First of all, we're going to look at the condition. I'm not going to talk about conditions a whole lot on here, but you really don't want to be buying a whole lot of books in acceptable condition. The other thing is you need to look at who's selling you the book, right? Maybe they're a seller who doesn't have a good seller rating. Maybe, just maybe, they're putting in some condition notes that don't match the condition of the book. And I've seen very experienced sellers make that mistake. That's going to happen sometimes. The other thing you need to pay attention to, especially if you're going to be buying a textbook and you're doing it not that far before textbook season, you need to look at how quickly is the seller sending you that book. Sometimes you're going to buy that book and it's going to come from overseas. It's going to take a lot longer. So once you've gotten to this step, you've looked at the Keepa chart, you've looked at the initial profit and ROI. Now you're looking at the Amazon listing. From here, you're going to plug in those numbers. You're going to make some adjustments and you're going to say, okay, is this a reasonable profit and ROI for this book? I think it's going to sell this quickly. It maybe sells very quickly, or maybe it sells, 2, 3, 4 months down the road, but maybe it's the higher ROI books you want to or should normally take you longer to sell. Ideally, we'd love to send in books for it to sell immediately and for you to make a 2, 3, 400% ROI. And that will happen sometimes, but that is not the norm. But big picture, what you want to know regarding that is that the longer the book sits at Amazon, the higher ROI you should expect to receive. And conversely, if the book is going to sell very, very quickly, I'm perfectly okay, and you should be okay with taking a lower ROI percentage. So I think the core lesson here today is that when you are sourcing books, do not rely solely on any one of these pillars. They all work together, the financials, the insights, and the trends, so you can make better buying decisions and have more confidence in this business. And remember, Building a successful online book arbitrage business is far more than just sourcing. Sourcing is the first step. To scale efficiently, you'll need a system that connects your buying decisions directly to inventory tracking, listing and shipping, and repricing. That complete and efficient workflow is built directly into Master Book Flippers, saving you from managing clunky spreadsheets or paying for a stack of extensive third-party tools. If you want to put this FIT framework into practice and start making smarter buying decisions, head on over to masterbookflippers.com and start your free trial today.